About 20 years ago, I heard a theologian named Francis Schaeffer talking about something that just really struck me, and I've never forgot it. He said, if you want to know what our society believes, look at the arts. Listen to the music that's popular. Watch the movies. Watch the TV shows, and they will reflect what our society believes. And I've never forgot that. And so when you listen to the music and watch our movies, here's what we believe as a nation, right? I won't be happy until I'm having sex. Guarantee, right? That is like every other song on the radio. I won't be happy until I find the right person, which is fascinating because it's never, I won't be happy until I become the right person. Right? It's never that. It's always the right person is out there, and once I find them, then everything's going to be great. It's never I have to become the right person. Anyway, fascinating. I won't be happy until I'm rich, right? Oh my goodness, until I'm rich. And then we just keep moving the bar on what rich is every generation. I mean, it's crazy. And then I won't be happy until I get even with the people who have caused me pain. I run now, and there's a song that I love on my running list, and it's funny because it makes me laugh, and it's about burning this person's house down. So, because they found out that he was being unfaithful, so I made friends with the chief of police so I can burn his house down. And it makes me laugh, and I run. But that's our society, right? It's like, I will be happy when... And we just keep changing it all the time. And unfortunately, when you look at the arts and you look at what we believe, there are a lot of things we believe that are really damaging to us. And a lot of people are falling for these things and these false beliefs, and they're pursuing them aggressively, and it's ruining their lives. Because if you believe the wrong thing, it can be really damaging to you. And so we're doing this series on movies in part to kind of look at and think about what are the beliefs that are embedded in American society that are damaging to us. And once in a while, I can show you something that actually is really, really positive, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I don't know if you have ever seen this movie by Pixar, Inside Out. I don't know if you're a cartoon, some of you are just not cartoon people. I am a cartoon person, so I love them. And I loved this movie when I saw it. So it's the story of this little girl named Riley, and what Pixar did so brilliantly is they personified the emotions that all of us have inside of us. So they personified her emotions, so instead of just feeling disgust becomes this little person, and fear becomes that person, then joy becomes that person, and sadness and anger. And they live inside Riley, the little girl, just like they live inside all of us. Your emotions live inside of you, right? And they run the control panel in Riley's mind. And so different times, you could see joy is at the controls. Well, that's what joy wants. Joy wants to always be at the controls. And so different times, obviously, disgust would step up or anger would step up. And it's such a fascinating story about how our emotions impact our day-to-day life. It's so interesting. And it's a great example of what's... Matter of fact, one of the things I was surprised to read as I was prepping this is, did you know there are counseling agencies across the country today that use this movie to teach children and adults about emotions? So fascinating to me. So in the story, Riley, this young 11-year-old girl, is really, really depressed because her dad takes a job in San Francisco, and they move from the home that she's grown up in Minnesota, where she's got all of her friends, and she's built her life to this point. She's on a hockey team, and she just loves it, all the way to San Francisco, and it's not a good experience. They move into a rundown house. They walk in, and the first thing you see is a dead mouse on the floor, and there's no yard. I mean, it's San Francisco, and it's just rough. And she cries her first day in school. Oh, any of you ever make the mistake of crying in public school at some point in your life? Oh, boy. So life is just not going the way she would hope it's going. And in this movie, you see key lessons that are backed up from the Bible about how to actually become emotionally healthy in the middle of things that are very, very stressful. And I thought, what a perfect message for our world today. Because we don't talk enough about emotional health as a society. The Bible has so much to say about it. And so I want to use this movie as a launching point. We're in this series called Peniel Goes to the Movies, and we're going to talk about this movie, and here's what I'm after today. I want to talk about steps you can take today, practical steps that will help you become more emotionally healthy, which is such an important subject. So in your program are these notes. Would you take them out and grab a pen? Welcome to those of you, of course, who are watching online. Glad that you have decided to watch today. If you go to our website at penielchurchlife.com, you can have these same notes and you can follow along. So I know I've got a lot of content. There is no way getting through all this content today. So I apologize to all of you who love to fill things in because you are going to be very dissatisfied. So that's why we have chocolate for you in the back. Take some more chocolate because I'm going to skip a lot. Number one, we're only going to really talk about two big things. First is I want you to learn how to see all of your emotions as valuable. See all of your emotions as valuable. And we don't do this. In the movie, Joy wants to be in control of Riley all the time. She doesn't want any other emotion to step up to the control panel. The only thing she wants for Riley is happy. Happy, happy, happy all the time. So she won't let the other emotions come to the control panel, especially sadness. She just has no idea why sadness is even there and what purpose she has, and so she keeps them away. And she wants Riley all to herself. And this is interesting because every experience that Riley has during the day turns into one of those little globes. It's a memory from the day. And so you can see that some of them, you can see the predominant color is yellow. It's her happy. So that means that those memories are all happy, and that's what she wants. But you can see scattered in there's like a little bit of anger. Down here's a little bit of disgust. The purple, there's a little bit of anger over there. So, but overall, this is what she wants for Riley every day. Every day she wants Riley to be happy all the time. And I just started laughing when I think about that. Isn't that a picture of American society? We want to be happy all time. Every single day, that's what life is about. Have you ever seen a commercial where they're trying to sell you something and the person in the commercial is sad? No. They literally try and sell you toilet bowl cleaner as if it's going to make you happy. They're happy to be using the toilet bowl cleaner. Won't this be awesome? You can be happy too. Everything is about happiness. And this is the society that we live in, right? We only want one emotion. We want happiness. And we want happiness no matter what we have to do to be happy. Who we have to hurt to be happy. Who we have to let go of to be happy. We just want to be happy all the time. And this same attitude has really kind of infiltrated the church. When I was young and we started attending church, as a family, we used to go to Sunday school, and they sang a song back then. And I don't know if they still sing it today. I hope not. Some of you heard this song. But here was a song we were taught to sing as kids in Sunday school. I'm in right, out right, up right, down right, happy all the time. I'm not kidding. Those are the lyrics. And then just repeat it. I'm in right, out right, up right, down right, happy all the time. Since Jesus Christ came in and cleansed my heart from sin. I'm in right, out right, up right, down right, happy all the time. Yeah, there we go. All right. Yep, there we go. What a lie. What a lie. I mean, it's even embedded in the church. That now that I follow Jesus, the only emotion at the control of my life is happiness. That's it. And we believe this. And it is a lie, and it has tremendous damage when we believe it. Look what Jesus said. I've told you all this so that you may have peace in me, because here on earth you will have what? Many trials. And what? And many happinesses? You're going to have sorrow. And so because Christians don't understand this, and our culture doesn't get it at all, we really think every moment of our life is supposed to be happy. If we're not happy all the time, something's wrong. And we bring that into the church. And so I've watched Christians for years, 3 decades. I've watched Christians follow this formula. I'm not happy. I'm supposed to be happy. God is not making me happy. Therefore, God is incompetent. And they walk away from God. 3 decades, I've watched Christians walk away from God following that formula over and over and over and over again. Because after all, God's only job is to make me happy, and I'm not happy, so God is just screwing everything up. So therefore, God isn't even worth worshiping. God isn't worth following, because this is about me being happy on earth. And when we believe things that aren't true, we really damage ourselves. Solomon, thousands of years ago, wrote a verse that is commonly quoted. As a matter of fact, it was turned into a very famous song. He said, there's a time for everything. He said, there's a time to cry, and there's a time to laugh. There's a time to grieve, and there's a time to dance. He says, all of the emotions that you have inside of you, they have a valuable place for you, and they need to be expressed appropriately, all of them. And there's a time for them. here's what we all need to be reminded of. We are created in the image of God, who is an emotional being. And all the emotions you have are a picture, a reflection of his greatness. And he doesn't have any emotions inside of you that were, oh, drat, I didn't mean to slip that one in. They were all created with a purpose, and they all have value. Do you see your emotions as valuable today? Do you see your emotions as valuable? So here's what we do with this. The first thing, literally on your notes, I want you to write this down. Pay attention to your emotions. Once you understand that God created you, wasn't a mistake, that he made you as an emotional being, he made you in his image, then you need to learn how to pay attention to your emotions, which is, just asking that, how do you feel today? Pay attention to the emotions and you don't have to, by the way, you don't have to pay attention to your emotions. You can suppress emotions, right? You can ignore all your emotions, can't you? You can numb your emotions. Some of you have been in situations where you have been in something that was really, really painful and you couldn't feel it. You know what it's like to feel a little bit numb. You can deny any emotions that you're feeling. But here's what the Bible has been saying about this again for thousands of years. Proverbs chapter 14, he says, a peaceful heart will lead to a healthy body. But look at this. Jealousy is like cancer in the bones. We don't want cancer in our bones, right? We do not want that. And what does he say? That emotion, like an unprocessed emotion like jealousy inside of you that you don't deal with, is like cancer in your body. It's going to take you out. It is having a physical effect on you. And the Bible's been warning about this for thousands of years. You don't just have the feeling of being jealous and not do anything with it. But that's what we do, right? You ever felt jealous of somebody else's success or jealous of somebody else's looks or what they have or what they own? And what do we do with it? We don't know what to do with it, so we push it down and we ignore it and we numb it and we suppress it and we just try and pretend like it isn't inside of us. And he says, and here's the consequence of that. Every time you have an emotion that you just try and suppress, it is having a physical effect on you. Here's what we know. If you do this, if you put on a false front and deny what you're actually feeling, it's going to leak out. And the way it leaks out, these are the common ways your emotion leaks out: anger or aggression. Some of you have a short temper and it just blows, or you have someone in your life that's got a really short temper. And part of what's going on is because they ignore emotion. Well, okay. That's like taking a bottle of Coke, throwing a Mentos in, screwing the lid on tight and shaking it up. Well, that's going to build. It doesn't just evaporate. And it comes out in anger and aggression commonly. It comes out in nightmares and dreams. This is fascinating. I was raised in a home where emotions were not tolerated. My dad was a Marine officer who couldn't stand emotion. If I cheered during a Packer game, my dad would yell at me and tell me to shut up and sit down. There were no emotions that were acceptable to my father. And so at a young age, I learned all of this. Emotions are the enemy. They're disgusting. They're to be destroyed. I can remember being a young boy thinking I wish I could be Spock from Star Trek because he had no emotions. And I thought that's what a man was like. Because emotions weren't welcome. The interesting thing is, until I really had a big emotional breakthrough at the age of 46, one of the consequences in my life were nightmares, constant nightmares. I had nightmares multiple times a week. I have no idea how many I used to have, but it was constant that I would have nightmares. And they would wake me up so violently that I would be awake for at least an hour because my adrenaline would be pumping so hard, and I'd have to just go watch TV for an hour until I fell asleep again. And I had no idea that any of this was associated with my emotions. So I know what this is like. I know what it's like to suppress and deny and ignore and crush your emotions so that you can't feel anything anymore. And it always leaks out. It doesn't go away. Depression and anxiety are a huge issue in America today because we don't process our emotions in any way. Sickness, lower immunity, high blood pressure, heart disease, and how about poor memory? Did you know that it can actually cause memory issues? These are just some of the things that we know happen when you try to ignore what God created inside of you. It's not a mistake that you have emotions. It's not a result of the fall of humanity. God said, okay, the ground's going to be hard to till. Women are going to have pain in pregnancy and delivery, and you are going to feel things from this day forward. Before then, you weren't going to have emotions, but now you're going to have them. It's like, no. When he created humanity, from the beginning, a beautiful gift he gave us was intended to be emotions. And we just have to understand that this is what he wants, and we have to pay attention to the emotions that we have. And I admit, as much progress as I've made, I still struggle to pay attention to my emotions. I literally have charts like this in multiple places. It's on my phone, it's on my desktop, it's printed out. I carry it in my prayer journal because I still have this experience where it's like, oh, I'm feeling something. I have no idea what I'm feeling. And this is how I process and pay attention to my emotions. If you just Google chart of emotions, you can find this and print it off. Because sometimes I need help identifying and paying attention to what I'm feeling. Then I want you to skip down to letter C. And I want you to understand the power of this next piece, because this is really significant, what neuroscience is showing us. Name your emotions. So you don't just pay attention to them, you name your emotions. So it's like, hey, I feel something. I know that there's something in here. I need to pay attention to it, and then you name it. And this is so interesting. One of the founders of research in this is a teacher and speaker named Dr. Daniel Goldman. He writes extensively about a subject called emotional intelligence. I've quoted him in the past. Fascinating subject. He was talking on an interview that I just happened to see this week. We were talking about it at work. And somebody sent this video to me. I'm like, oh my goodness, good timing on this one. And he said this. He said, what we know from neuroscience is that a negative emotion inside of you, a negative emotional state, narrows the bandwidth of all your talents, abilities, and your ability to think rationally. So when you're activated in a negative emotional state, it shrinks down your capacity even for rational thought. And he said, here's why. It's because emotions take up a huge amount of space in our heads. And he said, emotional distractions are far stronger to us than external distractions. So that's what you see in these pictures. I mean, look specifically at the woman. She's not just staring at something across the street, is she? I mean, there's something in her head that's got her attention, right? Some of you know exactly what that's like because you're physically here right now. But you're not emotionally here right now. Because you're thinking about what your husband said to you, or what your wife said to you, or what your boss said to you, or you're thinking about something intensely emotional that happened to you recently, and it's occupying all the space in your head. So physically here, but you're not really here. This is so interesting. So why does this happen? Why do our emotions occupy so much space in our head? What do we do with it? Well, you have a center of your brain, we know this from neuroscience, that's called the amygdala, and this is the part of your brain that gets activated if I come up and slap you in the face or call you a horrible name, and you're like, what? How could Brian do that to me? And all of a sudden your emotional centers are activated, and you just keep ruminating about it again and again and again and again. Matter of fact, this can get so strong, we call it amygdala hijacking, and it happens all the time in America. The feeling brain, it gets cut off from the thinking brain, and you do things that you're like, afterwards you're like, why? I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I said that. It's like, well, it was a hijack. The emotion took over, and you did what you wanted to do. So what has to happen is that we have to get that amygdala under control, and you got to get the prefrontal cortex, the thinking centers of your brain, moving again. Now, you want to know the coolest thing about the way God made us? You know how to make that shift so that all of a sudden the thinking center of the brain starts activating, and you literally, it's like a dial. It's like if your emotions this morning are spun up on a 9 or a 10, and you're sitting here and you're like just thinking about all this other stuff, you know how to turn that dial down? Here's what you know. Describe the emotion in just a word or two, and it reduces that activity in that center of your brain. Isn't that amazing? By using that chart and saying, oh, this is how I feel, and I name it, here's what you do. You want to tame it? Name it. You want to tame it, name it. And literally, we can, again, watch your brains do this. We can watch your brain activating in the amygdala, firing as you think about it over and over and over again. And then somebody comes along and says, what are you feeling right now? And you're like, and all of a sudden the prefrontal cortex starts activating. It's like, you know what I feel? I feel so hurt. I feel so taken for granted. I feel so whatever it is. And the moment you name it, the amygdala turns down and the active thinking part turns up. And you tame it by naming it. This is just science, but of course, as a person of faith, I love the fact that our God made it so that it calms down. We tame it by naming it. Do you see why it's so important then that you pay attention to what you're feeling? God didn't make your feelings as a mistake inside of you. He made you to pay attention to those feelings. You got to pay attention to what you're feeling. Because the way you tame it is to name it. So I want you to think about the answer to this question right now. If I was being honest with myself, I am feeling what today? Some of you are like, bored. So bored. Why did I come today? I'm ready to go. Or why didn't I take more chocolate? So, like, what are you feeling? Some of you feel angry today. Some of you feel really hurt. Some of you are scared. What are you feeling? Simply the act of naming it helps to tame it by the design of our God. So the second thing, and the only other thing we're going to talk about today, which is such a significant message in American culture today, and it's number 3, I want you to jump down to that, is we really need to rethink sadness. We really need to rethink sadness. So in the movie, like I told you at the beginning, Joy only wants Riley to feel happy. No one else is allowed at the control panel, especially not Sadness, the little blue one. Because every one of those memories that comes in, if Sadness touches the memories, they become sad. So that happy memory, as you can see, is starting to change to sad memories. And so Joy doesn't want that. She only wants Riley to feel happy all the time because that's what it's about. Life's about happy all the time. And she literally says, here's Sadness. We don't even know what she does. What does Sadness do? And sometimes that's our attitude towards sadness in American culture. It's like there's no real point in being sad. Matter of fact, we actually think that it's, as Christians, that it's somehow wrong to be sad. Ay, ay, ay. At one point in the movie, she draws a little chalk circle on the ground, and she says to Sadness, here's your space. Keep all the sadness in this circle. Don't let it out. And that's what a lot of people are trying to do in this world today is keep their sadness bottled up, keep it contained, keep it in one little space so it never gets out. Later in the movie, Sadness doesn't ever want to be around Riley again because she believes I only make everything worse. What do you believe about the emotion of sadness inside of you? What do you believe? Do you believe that? Do you believe that sadness only makes everything worse? Or do you think that God might have a purpose for allowing us to feel sad? The interesting thing is when you look in the Bible, you see a very, very different perspective on sadness than our American culture has developed. I already showed you a verse from Ecclesiastes where he says, there is a time in your life where sadness is the most appropriate response you can have. There's a time for it. But if you really want to see how different we are from God's view on this, look at Jesus. And look at how Jesus handled sadness in his life. Did you know that Jesus got sad? Did you know that Jesus wept openly in front of others, including other men? Did you know that Jesus never apologized to anyone for feeling sad? And Jesus let his grief out. He didn't bottle it up, keep it contained, draw a little circle and say, stand there. When he felt sad, he cried. And he wept, and he didn't feel any shame about it. I can't imagine living that way. And yet, the person that I worship as God Almighty, when he was here on earth, lived this way. So I know that if I'm going to imitate Jesus and follow Jesus, not in the other positive things only, but even in this, then I need to do what Jesus did, which, letter A, we have to learn how to normalize being sad. Because Jesus did. Jesus normalized sadness. One time it says this, as Jesus came to the city of Jerusalem right before the Passover and he was to celebrate with his disciples, he said he came up and he could see the city spread out in front of him, and he sat down and he just started crying in front of his disciples. And he wept, and the reason he wept was because he wanted so badly for them to know who he was and experience the love and life he was offering them, and he knew that they were never going to get it, that they were going to reject him, and that rejection was so painful to him that he just wept. And imagine you're like Peter standing there, and Jesus is sitting on the ground, he's just crying, he's crying really hard, and you're like, what's going on? Why is Jesus crying? This makes no sense. He's got a rock in his shoe? I don't know. It's like, but there's no discomfort from Jesus. He's sad. So he lets the emotion out in a healthy way. Another time his friend Lazarus has died, and they bring him to where his body's laid, and they said, Master, come and see. And when he got to the tomb, Jesus wept. And he wept openly in front of others, and he wept so hard that the people around him said, man, look how much he loved him. He really loved him. And he was so sad that he wept. So, how normal is the emotion of sadness to you? You know, this is, again, you want to talk about somebody who should not be delivering this message. I've told the story before. When I was 17 years old, or 18 years old, my grandpa died. And I loved my grandpa. And I went to the funeral, went through all the process, and I couldn't even make myself cry. I felt nothing from the death of a man I loved so much. So that's what happens if you try and put sadness in a corner and draw a circle around and say, you stand over here, is you miss a lot in life, and then it starts leaking out. And I want you to learn how to look for signs that you're blocking sadness. God didn't make sadness to be ignored by you. Jesus himself got sad. He's the perfect model. So we need to watch for signs that we're blocking sadness from being our experience in life. Just like I told you, if you block emotions, it's going to leak out. It's going to have an impact on you. Same thing with sadness. Here, think about this. Are there any situations in life you refuse to talk about? Are there places or people or objects that you just don't go near, think about, talk about? Are you blocking sadness? Are you using something? Is there some addiction in your life? Alcohol, food, sex, shopping, video games, TV, hobbies, porn. I was reading an article this last week, saw the headline of it, and they said, porn is anesthesia. All of those things are anesthesia. They numb the pain. That's what they all are. Look at the bottom two lines. Isn't that America? Man, that's America right now. Always looking for the next fix, and so much of it is just anesthesia. We are in so much pain, and using those things gives us a little bit of relief from the pain. That's what they do. We get a little bit of relief. We get a little bit of relief. Do you see any signs that these are present in your life? And many of these are symptoms of the fact that we're ignoring some deep sadness and pain in our life that we should be grieving. Because here's what I know. You try and cancel that out of your life, you cancel all those things out of your life too. This is why some of you, when we talk about the love of God, it is only here in your head. If I were to say to you, tell me the last time you feel loved by God, you can't even think of a time when you felt loved by him, because you can't experience these wonderful emotions while trying to cancel out that emotion. You turn the dial down on the painful ones, you turn the dial down on all of them. And you can numb yourself to the point where you feel nothing. And then you're in a really rough spot to be in. You miss so much. I mean, because joy is amazing and love is amazing. And you won't have them if you try and silence that. So what the Bible would say to do is just what Jesus did. When you feel sad, you've got to let it out in a healthy way. That's what Jesus did. He didn't try and bottle it up. He didn't try and wait, didn't try and grieve alone. He grieved. Jesus is our model. You let it out. I've got friends in my life who are alcoholics, and they get drunk constantly. I've got friends in my life who are shopaholics, and they buy all the time. I've known plenty of men who were completely addicted to porn and always returning to it. And that's the wrong thing. Dang it. I jumped ahead a little bit. We'll come back to that thought in just a moment. Letting it out, let me go this way instead. Letting it out is super hard because when I think about letting out my sadness, here's the words that come to mind for me. Number one is confusing. Sadness is confusing to me. If I'm really, really sad, it confuses me. It's messy, and I don't like being messy. Sadness is painful, and I don't like pain, and scary on two levels. First thing is, how will people respond? Again, go back to that question earlier. Did any of you ever make the mistake of crying in public school? Holy moly. I mean, you want to talk about how to trash your life at a young age, cry in public school. And they will label you. And if you're around the wrong people, they'll laugh at you. Ever have someone laugh at you when you were sad? Or tell you stop feeling that way? Ever have someone say that imply that you're wrong to be sad in that moment? I mean, it's just devastating to be sad around the wrong people. Or scary, because it can be, how long is this going to last? I mean, sadness is like, once you tap into that sadness and you start really feeling it, it's like, when does it end? Where's the ending to this? And so it can be really scary to really approach any of this subject, but here's why. Laughter can conceal a heavy heart, but when the laughter ends, the grief remains, and that's where I was going with that point earlier. So the people who want to turn to porn or alcohol or turn to food or turn to shopping or anything else, the moment that's done, what do they have still? The grief that they've been ignoring, that they've been trying to self-medicate with. You can self-medicate with anything in America because there's so many distractions out here. And yet what happens when that is done? When the laughter ends, what do you have? The sadness that you're still trying to avoid. That's what we get. So Jesus said, you got to go a different way. In the movie, this amazing thing happens at the end. So Riley is so angry at her parents for moving her out here that she lets anger take control of her control panel, and anger is going to fix this. And so anger gives her the idea to run away from home. She steals her mom's credit card from her purse. She buys a bus ticket to Minnesota at the age of 11. She goes to the bus station, gets on, and none of the other emotions can get through to her. As a matter of fact, her control panel turns gray. It's like she's numb. She feels nothing. She just wants to be happy again. And the only thing she can think is to go back where she was happy before, back in Minnesota. So she's going to escape. And nothing gets through to her until finally sadness steps up and takes control. And then all of a sudden, she can feel sad. And part of the sadness she feels is the sadness of leaving her mom and dad, and they don't know where she is. I mean, she won't answer her phone. They've been frantically hunting for her, and she feels sad for them. And so sadness gets her to get off the bus and go back to her mom and dad. And, they've been terrified looking for her all day in San Francisco, and they're so scared. And so in that moment, finally, with sadness at the control, she lets her sadness out. And this is, again, where it's scary. Some of you, the reason you don't let your sadness out is because my experience was your experience. You let your sadness out around the wrong person at some point in your life, and they really hurt you with it. And so you've learned it's not safe to be sad around other people. That's why Jesus is such a miracle to me. It doesn't even seem like he cared how people were going to respond to his sadness. I would like that pill, please. It's like, I'd like that. To just let my emotion come out in a healthy way and not care what anyone else around me thinks about it? Man. And in this case, with her sadness, how her mom and dad respond with empathy. They feel the sadness that she's feeling, and they just love on her in that moment, and this tremendous healing takes place inside of her. Because here's what you need to understand. Happy can't heal sad. Happy doesn't heal sad. It's when people respond with empathy to your sadness that you feel healing. And we're always trying to make everybody feel happy. So you feel sad, and I feel bad for you, and so I want to make you feel happy. But happy doesn't heal sad. And in that moment, she has this tremendous healing, which is so true of life. And her life turns around because of this. It's interesting. I was actually hoping for a very small crowd today, to be honest with you. I was really hoping, and of course, it's one of our biggest summer crowds of all for those of you watching online. Great. Because this was a hard message on me. Really hard. I made a lot of progress in the last 6 years. I have been to counseling. I journal all the time about my emotions. Things I'm talking about, I do. But I still find myself running from sadness like I run from nothing else in my life. This last week, a coworker was talking about a situation with her mom. Mom has Alzheimer's and has progressed to the point now where she can't even remember her own daughter. And she's just devastated. And so somebody in our team said, well, why don't we talk about our moms? And so I don't talk about my mom much. My mom had a stroke about, over 10, 12 years ago. She recovered, but part of, I think, the long-term impact of that is that she's slowly been losing her memory. Her short-term memory is practically all gone now, to the point where she can't even remember in a conversation what she just told me. And now she's at the point where she can't even remember that she hasn't called me, because she thinks she has. So, and my mom has been the hero of my life. We both came to Christ around the same time, and so much of my faith I learned from her as she began to follow Jesus at the same time, and I absolutely love my mom. And so all of a sudden, hey, let's all talk about our moms, and I'm prepping this message on emotion and sadness, and for the first time this week I felt how sad I am to be losing my mom. To know that the relationship that I've had all of my life with my mom, it's never going to be that way again, never. And I will be so excited when heaven comes. Because she'll be whole and I'll see her again and our relationship will be restored again. That's my hope, but in the meantime, I'm sad, and until this week, I wouldn't even let myself feel how sad I was. I wouldn't even acknowledge it until it's like God just forced me to this week. So here's what I want you to know from a person who struggled with this all their life. You have to think about this. For most of my life, the answer would have been no to that question right there. Emotions are not valuable. Most of my life, and you cannot live the life God has for you until you change your perspective and you accept them as an amazing gift from God. They are a gift to you. And then you have to deal with this. What's your view of sadness? And you have to get really clear about that. What do you think about sadness? Do you also see that as part of the gift that God has given us? An opportunity to be more deeply connected to Him and to each other? To heal from the pain that we have inside of us? And you really need to wrestle with the question of this. If I was honest today, I feel, and what do you feel? And if some of you, the answer is nothing, I feel numb, then you need to think deeply about whether or not that's what you should be feeling. and wonder if there isn't something that's blocking what God wants you to be experiencing in life. What I want you to know from a man who's lived this, you get pain either way. You get pain either way. You can numb your emotions to the point where you don't feel them. And you get a world of pain over there. Or you can learn to see them as a gift and connect with them in the moment and learn how to process them in a healthy way. And you'll have pain here. And then that'll lead to a healthier life. You get pain either way. You don't get to avoid the pain. It's just, where do you want the pain to come? At the beginning? Or pretty much for the rest of your life? You choose. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish. Our God is an emotional God. Do you know that the number one emotion he feels when he thinks about you is love? Did you know that? It is repeated constantly in the Bible from beginning to end. It's about God's love. It's about God's love. He doesn't just intellectually sit back on his throne and think about you and think, oh, I think I love that person. When God thinks about you, he doesn't just think loving thoughts. He feels love, overwhelming love toward you. You are that important to him. In the Bible, in Ephesians chapter 3, he prays, Paul writes to the church and he says, I pray that you will experience this love of God, though it's so great you'll never fully understand it. God doesn't want you just to know that you're loved, he wants you to feel loved. Do you feel loved by God today? There could be one of two causes for those of you who are saying no. For one of you, it could be that you're really blocking all the emotions that are going to allow you to experience him. And really have an honest conversation with God about where you're at today. Just talk to him about this. But for some of you, you've never received his love into your life. He loves you so much that he put his son, he allowed his son to come into this world to bleed and die on a cross for all of us. So that if we turn to Jesus and ask for it, he will completely forgive us and put us in the family of God, in the direct path of this river of love that never stops. And if you want that, with your head bowed, you can say something like this in your heart to him. You can say, Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I need you. I want to experience your love. So would you please forgive me? Put me in your family and let me experience what you have for me. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, as I finish up today, I want to ask you if you wouldn't mind getting this little card out of your program. Even if you're just a regular tender, just let us know, put your name down, but maybe you prayed and asked for his gift of forgiveness or renewed a commitment, or maybe some of you, this is a big topic in your life, and you need to pray for you. We have a whole team of people to pray for you. If you just let us know that you want prayer, we'll pray for you. This is how you communicate with us as a church. Then what I want to ask you to do is drop it in one of the 2 offering boxes back on the back wall where you came in. Thanks so much for coming. We hope to see you again next week.